San Francisco. I keep getting emails from guys complaining about how hard day game there is. Girls are too serious, everyone has a boyfriend, and other excuses. But today I'm chatting to the only guy I know who has cracked day game in San Francisco. He has over 20 day game days in San Francisco, but it didn't start out this way. So in this episode, you will learn what he needed to change in his day game to start getting results with San Francisco girls, why the typical bad boy day gamer image is not what girls in San Francisco like, and what types of guys they do go for. He talks about storytelling techniques he uses there and how he developed them, conversation topics that, weirdly enough, instantly make San Francisco girls attracted to him, best places to day game there, small tricks for day game texting and dating specific for San Francisco, and why San Francisco girls will seduce and pull you if you play your cards right. If after this podcast episode you're thinking, damn, I want to learn to day game just like this guy, then you'll find all the information about day game coaching in all the links in description. All the coaching spots in person are fully booked until mid-June, but there are still a few spots available later in the summer. Plus, there are 3 more coaching spots left for online coaching because I don't work with more than 10 online coaching students at the same time to make sure I can devote enough time to each student and keep the quality of coaching high. All the information on that is available in the links in description. But if you want to get a taste of how I coach without paying anything, then I started doing a thing where I coach 10 guys online for free. And I hope to be able to do this thing each month with 10 new guys if I'll have enough time. To find out more information about free coaching, again, check the links in description. And now let's learn more about day game in San Francisco. Bingo in the Bay, one of my favorite guys from the group chat. The guy who's like proper, day gaming, doing a lot of wild shit, but also, professionally inclined and hardworking and knows how to have fun. Hey, bro, how are you?
Thanks for the intro, man. Very generous intro. I'm good, dude. How are you?
Very, very good. I remember the last podcast episode we recorded with you at your place while you were playing guitar. We were recording. I recorded it as an audio for the podcast, and we got so high that when I had to book my flights to come home from Argentina, I booked them for like the wrong month at all.
Oh my God. Yeah, that sounds
That
right.
was ridiculous. But now it's been a few years since then, and surprise, surprise, you are the first guy I know who has cracked San Francisco day game, because if there is one place in the US I hear guys complain about all the time, and there is complaining where like guys are bitching, oh, New York City is so bad, oh, I like LA is so bad, Miami is so bad. Those places are great. I know people who are doing great day gaming there. There's just guys complaining, but there isn't just guys who are legit and they're complaining about cities that are really shitty. And San Francisco is, I think it's like the shitty day game city in the US, because it is a big city, it's a popular city, but no one's doing good there. But now we have you. A few years after I coached you there.
Yeah.
You've polished something, you've found some magic formula, and you found that works. So you were willing to share with the guys, to tell them, hey, this is how you actually get laid in San Francisco. But before we jump into that, while we were preparing to record, you told me this hilarious thing that about your job interview. Could you
Oh my
tell the
God.
story? Because that's hilarious.
Yeah. So guys, getting coaching from St. Robert, it's not only going to fix your day game, it's going to get you jobs, apparently. So, I'm an engineer by training, and I had a friend call me up. I just got my green card for the US, so now I can work in all kinds of other jobs. And so a friend called me up, really interested in trying to get me to interview for this sales position at a company. And so my first interview is with the chief sales officer, so basically the top dog in sales. And I basically have 30 minutes to convince this guy that I can do outbound sales. I can do all these sort of basic sales initiatives without really any resume experience. I mean, I do some of this at my job, but it's not like every day. And so, we're kind of going back and forth for a while, and this actually went 20 minutes over. So we're at like almost the 40-minute mark now of just kind of going back and forth. and he's really not convinced that I understand what it is to do outbound sales. And so, for anyone who doesn't know what that means, it's just like cold calling, right? Trying to go build new leads. And he's like, you don't know, trying to get me to convince him that I don't, that I know how to build a pipeline. And I'm like, oh, I know how to do this. And so basically, I go into the three things stack on this guy, sort of half jokingly, but yeah, I basically use what I learned from Daygame to explain what a sales process is, because that's effectively what it is. It's really just the hardest possible version of sales. You really have no credibility. You have nothing but the shirt on your back, right? And so, talk about a few things like essentially critical volume, right? That affects the way, at least in Daygame, I'll just go back to this, but the way you text, the way you communicate, the way you carry yourself really is almost, you could calibrate it just by increasing or decreasing volume. I mean, if you're doing high volume, you just have so many fucking options that you don't care. And that's what I was trying to convey to this guy is like, well, um, BSing my way into this. I just told him, like, in Daygame, I mean, it's you essentially need at least 20, 25 sets a week, or like you might as well just stay home. Um, and the guy was pretty floored, frankly. He's like, that's a pretty bold thing to say in an interview. But anyways, it landed me a third interview that I had today. So uh, we'll, we'll,
So,
we'll, we'll see what happens.
how did he first react when you told him you used the day game? I mean, you said you used to, but I mean, yeah, you used
Yeah.
to. You're kind of, you're good now. You're not going out actively, from what I understand. And so, how did he react?
Um, Shocked, I guess, because it was a video chat. I looked at him. I mean, he didn't really say anything. He just kind of sat there and took it in. I sort of, I primed him for this, though. I was like, this is not a conventional thing I would say to anybody, but given the circumstance, this information is very valuable, and I think you could appreciate this, but I hope you don't judge. So there was sort of a pre-opener to that, so to speak, where I'm just kind of like bracing the guy for what he's about to hear. But nonetheless, he was like, yeah, I mean, I've never heard that at an interview, that's for sure. And so it clearly resonated with the guy because it's built on good sales principles. And so, yeah, it can get you
You
jobs,
can tell
guys.
him. You can tell him you're the only guy who has cracked San Francisco.
Honestly, I'm the only one I've seen that has or know of that like
Yeah,
has
I
been
don't know
able to
anyone
make it a
else.
consistent thing.
I don't know
Yeah.
anyone else. I know, there are probably some guys doing like house party scene and night game shit and whatever. But I don't know of a day gamer who's doing good in San Francisco. So I think let's jump into the topic. Let's talk about day game in San
Yeah.
Francisco. So
Yeah.
how long ago was it when I was there? It was like 3 years ago, or
Like basically 2 years ago. We're in the winter after that, but it's like 2 summers, let's say. I
okay.
think. Yeah.
I think I was there during the winter.
Yeah, it was like, well, it was sort of end of that year. And then there was like 2 summers after that. And so,
Okay.
um, yeah, yeah. But I had done, I
So
mean, a good amount of day game under your coaching before then as well, too, right? Um, yeah.
so what did you figure out? What are the maybe the big topics you had to change, and then we can kind of maybe look into each of
Mm,
those topics a bit more kind of in detail.
yeah. So it's funny. I actually wrote notes just in case I got stuff to fall back on here. But off the top of my head, I think probably there's a few things that really made a huge difference. One is sort of understanding the why about every step of the interaction. And that really came through volume. But I felt like once I understood the why, then sort of it became my personality. And it became just much more natural, right? And sets just flowed so much better. Everything was just very natural. I didn't even really have to text much for a date. It was like you just text them to set it up, basically. It wasn't really, no longer became this thing where I'm like, oh, like stressed out. It was just kind of fun. And that really came from volume. But I think, and surprise, surprise, the hardest thing was storytelling to really make that all come together. And what made it work for me is creating stories that were like very true to me and sort of using that why to craft stories that really sort of highlighted or like illustrated good personality traits of mine. So like really most of
Wait,
the time
I
drawing it
wanna
back
go into
to
the I wanna go into the stories later, because can we just do like like a table of contents type of thing? Because you
Okay,
have some
sure,
goals. Can you give me the headlines and then let's kind of maybe look into each headline
sure. So
after that.
that was one. I think
You had
the other,
why, you had storytelling.
yeah, those ones. I think like one of the biggest things is understanding the different neighborhoods because as you go to different neighborhoods, it's actually very different vibe and very different kinds of girls, and you'll get night and day different results even just by walking like 10 minutes in a different direction. So I think that's one of the like biggest things. Another tough one is sort of part of that is the logistics is like sort of solving that because it's San Francisco itself is small, but then there's all these cities around it, and they're very far and separated by water. So that's another one. And I think maybe the other was just getting a better sense for like what dynamic worked over here, and like being like the high energy guy or like the party guy, that's not something that really resonates with girls here. I think being like a more like chill, intellectual dude, and not leading so aggressively, but sort of like soft leading, just sort of lead by implying and things like that. Not being so forward, I suppose, seemed to work better for me than like really trying to go for things too much. Um, and that came through a lot of failed dates and then sort of realizing it and sort of like stopping to care. Then that basically fixed everything. And
Sorry,
then
Bingo, let me interrupt you with one quick question. I know you have over 20 day gamers in San Francisco. What's your
yeah,
total day game lay count?
I don't know, like it's probably in the high 20s because outside of SF there's been like a handful in San Diego and then a handful in Canada. Um,
Basically, the things you were just talking about, uh, you're moving towards becoming a pretty advanced day gamer. Like the
sure.
things you just explained, that's how you go from intermediate to really like high level. That's the big transition that happens because the beginner just understands the model. Like that's it. He learns, kind of London day game model. He learns to deliver the lines. He learns basic storytelling, and then build a bit of comfort close. That's a beginner. Intermediate is extremely good at model, and he has like one thing he's really good at. That might be the high energy guy, the party guy. Yeah, like he has his persona, the fuckboy vibes, the teasing guy, the bad boy. And then to go to like the high level, you really go away from these kind of cliches and you develop your own thing. And this is what you're talking about right now. San Francisco has pushed you to move from that intermediate towards that advanced stage. I think if you went to an easier location, I normally I say that to go to this phase, you need to have at least 30 day game lists. That's when guys start doing this, but you were forced to do this earlier. Perfect. Sorry for interrupting. Let's jump back in.
No, yeah, it's a really cool point, and yeah, hopefully I'm there. But I think maybe the one last thing too, and it sort of ties in with that, is just being more congruent with style and like really having a very specific look and an edge in that way. That resonates with the girls here.
Style in
So
terms of how you look or style of game.
I would say style in terms of how you look.
Okay.
So like ratty look is not going to get you far here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
More of like alternative kind of look is going to get you much further here. But that's once again, it's neighborhood dependent. Like we can go into that later, but like different neighborhoods
Yeah.
where there's a strong preference depending on that.
Yeah. This is really cool. Anything else on your list of the table of contents?
I mean, like I'll go through. So I have like a whole list of pros for SF. I know everyone likes to trash San Francisco, but I have a list of good things about it, and like just to and it helped me out because I got down several times day gaming here in San Francisco. Like there's a lot of harsh BS I had to put up with over here. And we can go into those stories if you want, but it was, and so, what got me to just get in a good mood about it is always look at this list or just like have these in mind. Like, hey, it's actually not that bad. There's actually some things about this that can be good or viewed as good. It's not the best day game city, but like you got to make the most of it. So I have that. Um, I have a list of like the different neighborhoods, the good ones and bad. other areas you can go to close by for a short trip, and then a bunch of like just general little tricks and things that I've come up with over the for the little last little while that I use pretty often now. So I have things like
Hmm.
that too.
Okay, okay. Anything about texting or running dates, or it's the same as everywhere else?
It's I mean, I could go into both of those. I think it's pretty similar, but I think there's maybe a few things I can get into that are
Okay,
useful.
I'll write them down and we can cover them kind of shortly and look at that. Dude, sounds good. So let's go from these. Let's go over each of these. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the why and explain what do you mean why by saying why?
Yeah, yeah. That's a question I didn't even like, let's say, understand maybe like 2, 3 years ago. I know you told me that you tried to beat it into my head and you got frustrated as hell sometimes when you're like, dude, just like tell the damn story, shut up. But yeah, the why is like, so Daygame model, and this is for maybe any beginner listening, it's structured in such a way that like you have like following the model to a T is the training wheels, but you have to do that enough times to understand why the model's built the way it is. And you can't read that in a book. It has to be experienced. And so basically, I guess what Robert's trying to get me to get to here is like the why is learned through a lot of volume, but what it lets you tap into is sort of an ability to innovate on each step of the model. And so you can kind of create it in your own way because you understand why you're doing it and when to
Oh
do it.
yeah,
And so that was basically the like inflection point or the switch on where I was like, oh, I mean, now this went from not being fun some days to just like, okay, I don't give a shit anymore. This is like basketball or, whatever it is. Um, so yeah, that's what I mean by the why, I guess. I'll just stop there for a second.
this is dude. This is gold. Like if we still had deacon thing like in the old chat, you'd be a deacon after what you just said. That's it. Like it's
But
very advanced shit that you're talking about right now. The people don't understand this. This is why they get stuck in day game once. And then I try to get them to just go through the motions. And then I try to explain it, but the better I get, the better, like this is why I like coaching online lately more than in field, because with online, you can demonstrate a student a small principle and then within a few weeks, within a month, he sees real improvements in day game. And he didn't understand why he has to do that. And now he saws that, oh, if I implement what Robert told me to implement, like this shit turns out like a month later, it gets me more numbers, it gets me more dates, and it kind of makes them trust the model more than in infield. It's harder because infield is so intense, like you're doing everything in just a few days. It's completely wild.
yeah,
Yeah, because not a lot of people understand it because of this. So yeah, so you basically understood why you have to follow the model, why it works, and then that gave you the opportunity to start polishing each part of the model to and adapt it both to your personality and the location. Is that what you're saying?
basically, yeah. So then, like, it's sort of like the why is it's kind of funny. You have to like sort of mine out the underlying theory. You can't read it in a book. I mean, you could read it and you can think you understand it, but then you really just have to put into practice so much that like, oh shit, like now you can actually see it when you're doing it in person, and you're not thinking about it. You're just seeing it sort of evolve through the set, right? And maybe that's what I mean. And yeah, it's sort of what be able to make SF like work and fix a lot of problems and sort of really start to make it my own. And that's when sets got fun because I'm like, oh, I can literally be myself just in this specific way. And highlight this part of my person when I want to, or this part, and that's how this is going to make this whole story go together for her right now.
So it sounds like it was like two sides, two parts of the equation. It was first you started trusting the model, and then you got proficient enough at it to start polishing it for the environment.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a really good assessment.
Okay, that's really really cool. So let's then move to the storytelling thing. You said you were kind of working a lot on creating stories that were true for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I just noticed there's a couple things, right? One is I ran into the same stories or the same sort of topics all the time. Um, and then I also noticed that when I used certain stories, I would get a very, very high hit rate with like a date out of that set. And so, like, for example, for the latter, so for the story that worked all the time, basically I would always off the opener or pretty soon off the opener, maybe not the first stack, but one of the first few stacks would always be to drive the conversation towards art. That's the perfect launch pad for me to talk about that I play guitar, design guitars, fucking build guitars. Um, and I mean, it's that's such a story to them that like it sort of stands out. It just it's a sort of easy conversation starter, and it was I think they just view it very attractively. Like it's just I think universally girls love musicians, and so it's just a great way to go to take the conversation. And so basically going that route really helped. And dialing down like stacks about like party stuff and things like that. Like the girls here, I think, are far more like chilled. They're into yoga, they're into art, they're into like meditation, or a lot of them are software engineers, stuff like that. And so, like, a lot of these high energy type stories and things just don't work and don't resonate. And you're just going to sort of like, oh, like almost polarize the conversation too much to a point where, like, yeah, you got no common ground here. And like, she doesn't care anymore.
Yeah.
And so, finding those key topics and then having teases about like and teases and stories about like yoga, software engineers, just the things you run into constantly, were really key to sort of making something that's really reproducible. Not so much copy paste, but like I have my tool belt and I know when to use like all these little moves. And the same can be said for openers and stacks.
This is interesting for two reasons. Number one, you found something that resonates with the environment, resonates with the girls in SF, this kind of art scene. But the second thing why I really like this is I don't suggest this often, but when I see a student who's really struggling with storytelling, like the topics come up and he's not able to just kind of come up with things to say on any topic, and I always tell them, again, I don't say this enough to a lot of guys, but when I do, the idea is find a few topics you're really good at, you're really interested in, and
Yeah.
lead the conversation towards these topics. I was coaching this guy in Warsaw a few years ago, and he was just really into books, like and philosophy and things. And a lot of girls like that, but he was extremely bad at coming up with things to say on stories, even though he was a very high value guy in any kind of form you can imagine. Probably the richest guy I've ever coached, and as
Mm,
well. I don't know. I assume a billionaire or close to that.
shit.
Uh, yeah, he's a crypto guy who got into crypto in the early days, like more than 10 years ago. So.
Okay. Yeah. Living the dream.
But he was extremely bad at coming up with things to say, and then we just moved the conversations towards his topics all the time. He just stacked about books. The
Yeah.
topic on books came up. He started talking about philosophy and psychology. Chicks loved it. They had great conversations. And
Yeah.
yeah, so you did a very smart thing, and you figured this out on your own. So you polished you adapted your stacking, your storytelling, and all the topics you talk about to the environment, and also kind of showed that you are this guy who is into music, into art. This is something that's also common. We have, I assume you know Joe from the group chat. He's
Yeah. Yeah.
also a serious guy, but he's also very much into music and art. And he actually day games a lot in these art galleries, but he does it just because he's in an art gallery anyways. And it is very sexy for girls. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Anything else about crafting and polishing your storytelling, or let's move to neighborhoods?
I mean, there's one technique I shared in the chat, and maybe it's worth sharing here, but it's something that
For
I started
sure.
using, and it was based off of a story that worked really, really well, and it was actually a true story, is the funny thing. So I'm basically going to tell you guys a story, and you can tell it how you want, and you can use this how you want. But I started going to yoga last year, and I found it super interesting, and so it was in this like kind of upscale neighborhood, sort of like fratty kind of neighborhood, right? And I go to this fucking yoga studio, and I feel like it's just like the high school classroom all over again. So you kind of have like the good kids in the front, like the social kids in the middle, and then like the bad kids in the back. And I basically use that sort of like good kids in the front, bad kids in the back dynamic to stack on girls at yoga. And dude, I came up with a lot of really good. And actually, this makes me think of something. I got to hold this thought. I'm going to write this down because I need to say this later. Um, so I would use this to just kind of meet girls in yoga. But anyways, when it came to meeting girls on the street who were going to yoga, I'd be like, I would tell them, hey, so the interesting about yoga, I started going there 6 months ago, and I noticed the craziest thing. So maybe not craziest thing, but anyways, I'm doing a shit job of telling the story. I smoked a joint earlier, but so I tell like, I noticed this really interesting thing about yoga. So every time I go in, it's like there's always these really nice girls in the front. There's like the social kids kind of in the middle, like they just come here to talk. And then there's these kids in the back, and I'm convinced they were smoking before. That better not be you, right? And just sort of like that story of like there's this environment, there's two kinds of people, there's the good ones and the bad ones. I know you're the bad one, right? Just always making them the bully or the villain, whatever it happens to be. And that was a good story format that I use not only for yoga but for other things. And there's a guy from the chat. I don't want to throw out names, but he helped me brainstorm on this one after I shared it with him and like helped me polish it a bit more too. So thanks for that one. But yeah, it's a good storytelling technique. It's easy and it works.
Very cool. This is, again, very good storytelling technique. And this is kind of what I'm trying to get students to do. When you first learn, like, let's say you're using whatever, like three things or whatever storytelling technique you want to use, or your dream must be, and all of this stuff. It's all great. You got to learn how this works, but then you have to develop your own stories. It's not day game isn't about, this is what I don't like about how London day game model was taught before. Like it was relying on copy paste stuff too much on these
Hmm.
fake stories. I think these stories are good templates, but you have to make up your own stories and figure out what works for you. You have to take the structure and build your game around your real personality, which is kind of how you go from having your first lays and to becoming intermediate and really, really good. That's the transition, sort of.
Hmm.
Super cool. That's a very, very good. That's a very good storytelling media. I love it. What did you write down so we don't forget it?
Oh, so always be stacking. Be closing too, but no. So what I mean by this is in your daily life, just stack everybody all the time, regardless. I don't care who they are, what they're doing. Just if they're beside you and in your vicinity, just start stacking them. You don't have to open them. You can just be like, just tease them about something. Like you don't have you can just open conversations that way. And I think you should always be doing that because it just makes you so good at stacking because you're always coming up with new material because you're just making fun of everyone all day. And so I do it
Yeah,
at work, I do it everywhere. And so I think it's just a good habit.
I do the same thing. I use stacks to talk to people. I will use like statements to just start conversations with people in like a completely random environment.
Yes.
And I have this thing where, let's say, a girl says she's works in finance. I'm like, oh, you're really smart. You're one of those really smart ones. I'm like the opposite. I'm like a fucking dumbass, and like I create this contrast. I do the same thing when I meet like random people, like a dude, and he says he does something smart. It's like, oh my god, you're so smart. No, I'm like the opposite. I teach guys how to meet girls. I'm like a complete dumbass. But yeah, you can. This is perfect. You can use stacking and storytelling and teasing and all of this shit like all the fucking time, man. This is super cool. Thank you. This is going on my X feed as short snippets from this interview.
Nice, dude.
Uh,
Yeah, no, I want to give some examples on that actually. So, like
sure.
some ways in which I actually apply it. So, one example is that I've started to do is when I'm at like a coffee shop. You know how you go up, you buy your coffee, and you like sort of stand off to the side waiting for your fucking coffee. So, if there's a cute girl beside you, study the damn menu in front of you, find the craziest item, and accuse her of ordering that. It's just a great way to start a conversation and just put her in a box, okay? And so that's an example of like starting a conversation with a stack. You don't need the open necessarily.
Yeah.
Another one that I shared with some of the guys too is for seated sets because I hate them. I will go up to girls and if they're sitting down, I'll be like, "Hey, excuse me, this can be really really awkward, but I was actually saving that seat. I had to go to the bathroom quickly, but can you just move over there?" and like deadpan until she reacts. Then you can start to smile and let her know you're kidding, and like just go straight into like a set. And so those are like few of the types of things that what I mean by always be stacking as well, not only with like strangers, but just opening them that way.
Yeah, I think you shared this in a chat, right?
I did, yeah. I shared those both in the chat, I think.
Yeah, I think I don't remember the coffee one, but I remember this. I was saving the seat and I was reading, and it was like that shit works. That's hilarious. But I wasn't Pablito saying he uses something similar?
So I told him about it. I remember we were talking. He said he tried it out and it worked. So maybe that's what he's referring to, or maybe he came up with it himself.
Yeah,
I don't know. But like I told him about it months ago and he said he tried it out. He's like, hey, it actually works.
yeah. I remember you using this in the chat. You telling about this in the chat. I think that's a really cool. That's a really cool technique. Super cool. Any other examples you want to give us?
See if I have something in my notes here. Yeah. No, do you want to? Yeah, I'm good on for now. I think I don't have anything else written down. I think those are just good ones that people
Okay,
can use to think about it.
let's jump to the neighborhoods. Understanding
Yeah,
different neighborhoods and how day game is different in each one of them. First of all, do you want to give away the neighborhoods, or
I don't mind. I literally have seen a day gamer once in 9 years, and so nobody does it
there are day
anyways.
gamers in LA and in San Francisco. I get emails from them, so I'm just telling you that if you're still day gaming there, maybe save your favorite neighborhood for yourself. Just
Um, I don't think they'll go here, or it. I mean, I'm sure people say they day. I've never seen day gamers out, and I'm always out at the best
okay,
time at the best spot. So whatever. I mean, if
totally
they want to
fine.
go, they can go. They're not necessarily easy, so I don't really care.
Yeah, I'm just
Um,
just so
yeah.
you know.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I don't mind sharing. I'm moving out of here
Perfect,
anyways.
perfect.
So there's a ton of different neighborhoods. Maybe we'll go through the obvious ones first, just to kind of give people a good sense of what those are like. And then I want to go into maybe some smaller ones. There's some really cool day game routes I've come up with that are great. And like there would almost I'm probably the only day gamer who's ever been to these routes. Some of these I'm going to share. Um, I think what I'll start with first actually is places not to go. So Market Street, don't do it. Any of the malls, they're all terrible and like just depressing. I mean, there's nothing in there. 24th Street Mission, don't do that part of Mission and South. I mean, it's basically like um, it's not the kind of girls you want to dig game in. They're like rough neighborhoods. Yeah, there's like foot traffic, but they suck. Don't go there. So I think really the best for me, I had three main locations that I cycle through that if I want to get volume days, these are the three that I'll go to. It's either Mission District, Ferry Building in that general area, or like Marina and Russian Hill. And they're all really different, actually. They're all kind of interesting, and you have to approach them differently as such. And so like the Mission District, and it's too bad it didn't take you here, but it was dead at the time, and so it wasn't worth it. But it's picked back up a lot. But it's more of like kind of the hipster neighborhood. You get sort of a little bit of everything in there. You'll get all kinds of people. It's really big. There's some nice parks in there, and like a lot of good day game routes, and you can kind of just walk around for a while and you combine it with a few other adjacent neighborhoods too, and so like Hayes is pretty close by, and there's like Noe Valley is also kind of close by, and you can always just pair those in to just sort of add more volume and like less sort of repetitive laps around. But I would say that the Mission is probably the best place, at least for me, because in essence, like my personality resonates best in the Mission. And so like the musician angle really works over there. I mean, it works everywhere, but it works best in the Mission. And so my hit rate was really good over there. Um, and then there's like the Ferry Building, which is sort of like the hub of the city. So like all of the commuter traffic kind of goes through there. So you get girls from like everywhere, all kinds of jobs. It's kind of like a total fucking crapshoot of everything. Like way more of a mixed bag than anywhere else. There's a lot of cute girls and like there's a lot of traffic right from let's say like 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays. And then on the weekends, there's a farmer's market there from like 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. That's really, really good. And it's dense, so like you kind of have to be able to be comfortable with that or navigate around it. It's not bad. The only problem with this area, is that the girls can be from anywhere. And so if they're from like the other side of the bay, obviously it's really problematic logistically, and like you're not likely to get her out. Even if she really likes you, it's like, fuck, dude, I won't go over the other side either. So like I don't blame them. Um, and so that just makes it really tough, especially if they're from like the North Bay. There's all kinds of spots, and so that's really the biggest problem with the ferry building. It actually works better if you live in Oakland because most of the girls are going to the East Bay. And so if you're day gaming the ferry building, they're more likely to live where you live if you live in the East Bay. So that's just a note there. Um, Hottest girls, and probably one of the biggest areas is the Marina District. And Robert's been there. I took one of the guys from the chat there who taught me how to do a jogging set, by the way. That was pretty fucking hilarious, man. That guy's an animal. I love him to death. But
Who was the guy?
I don't know if I'm supposed to do names because his name isn't on
Nickname.
in the EM Germany.
EM. Oh, okay. Yeah, I know who you
Yeah,
mean. Yeah.
yeah. But so anyways, this is probably like the biggest and has the most hot girls, but it's the culture there is like very fratty. It's basically like where all the Stanford graduates go to get married, like to marry their fucking like high school sweetheart. So like it's not exactly like there's a lot of hot girls, but most of them are either taken or married. I have had some interesting successes there. Like I had a coffee date that I closed in an hour. So like short interaction, had a coffee date the next day and closed in an hour over there. And met some other really cool girls, but most of the girls that you'll bang from that area will be from other neighborhoods and they're just there visiting the day. The girls that like live there properly are like sort of rich, sort of the aristocrats, let's say, of San Francisco, basically. And so they're not so interested in a day gamer, and most of them aren't available. But it's great practice. It's like one of the nice things. I had this list of pros about San Francisco that maybe we could go into in a moment is that I think it's really easy to stop people. People are really friendly and they're relatively forgiving over here as long as you like dress well and you're clearly not homeless. And you can like, just not be weird. You're gonna be totally fine. Like honestly, the people here are so nice and it's so easy to stop them. So it's a great way to practice talking to really hot girls because they'll stop. They might not give a shit, what you have to say or necessarily respond to your number. But it's fun practice. And that's one thing you'll notice is the girls that really live in that neighborhood. It's really, really interesting. I'm trying to wrap my head around it, but you can have a really great set where like this set in another neighborhood will work so fucking well. The girl would love to come out with you. She would love to like just hang out. And you have that energy with these girls that are from here, and you'll get the number and you're like, okay, like, yeah, like this, you have a good feeling about it and just fucking flakes. So many of them. I mean, some of them will come out and some of them will go for it, but like, when they go back to think about it later, they're like, no, I don't want a day gamer. I want to meet, 6'9" Chad from like, Stanford or whatever, whatever happens to be. But like, they're just not really interested in that archetype. They want like the clean cut guy who like, got his MBA. And that's okay. They can do that. That's totally fine. But it's just, you should know that if you're going to day game there, it's a good practice zone. And to really target girls that stand out and aren't like, they don't blend in there. If you can find those girls, perfect. She's out for the day. She's looking for something to do. That's a girl that you really want to approach. And I've had some incredible experiences that way. But like the girls that are wearing the yoga pants and like very trendy clothing, it's like, yeah, it'll be fun to talk to, but even if your number close rate is good on them, like it's just the conversion is really bad into dates over there. And I know I rambled a lot there, so I'll hit the pause button for a second.
No,
If there's
no, it's
anything.
perfect. Keep going.
Okay. So a couple other things to look out for. There's a couple of big like events and fairs in a neighborhood called North Beach. There's like a summer fair and like two other events. And on those weekends, it'll be like some of the first Saturdays of the summer. It's fucking packed, man. They close down all the streets to cars. People are just walking around. Super easy, like good energy. It's fun. And that's like a fun thing to look out for. I'll say that I have Third Street and like the convention center, Kearney Street. If you do that, like you just don't go onto Market Street, but everything else is good. The convention center is really great. So what you can do sometimes is actually look up what convention they're going to. So like know in advance that there's going to be a convention there and have a stack ready about that. And you can sort of like leverage that to your advantage. The girls will only be in town for a few days, and if it's the right kind of conference, that might be like some of these girls might be down. I haven't personally gotten that to work. I haven't done that a lot. With that said, it's been like twice I've gone out there and messed around with that. But it's an idea and something you can try if you're sort of like running out of stuff that's entertaining you.
So like
Um,
sex workers conference.
yeah, that's like the gold mine, isn't it? That's the day gamer's dream. Um,
We were in with Mr. T. We were in Serbia. I think the first, no, second time I went there, and we saw this tool set of girls who had like suitcases with Pornhub stickers on them.
uh, Jackpot.
Yeah. So, any other neighborhoods that guys should explore?
Yeah. I'll give a few more things. So Valley is next to the mission. It's a great place to start a day game session because it's sort of like low volume, it's chill, there's some coffee shops, it's like easy to kind of get going, and you can go into somewhere more populated. So I sort of like to start there some days. I'll just kind of like go grab a coffee and then get going. Um, Another, and this is one of my secret ones that I probably shouldn't share, but I will because whatever,
Don't.
it's fine.
Don't.
No.
If it's if
It's
it's your
good.
favorite, keep it to yourself. I just
Leaving. Like, there's no way I'm staying here. I don't care,
okay.
and I
Okay.
don't think anyone will
Just
do it.
I
But I'm
warned
just.
you. I warned you.
Oh my God. Okay. I mean, what you can do is 3 streets in Noe Valley that make up a big circle, and they're packed with foot traffic. It's amazing. And so, if you're listening, it's 24th Street, Church Street, Sanchez, and 30th. They make a big loop. 24th is obviously the most dense. There's a town square there, which is honestly, I don't really approach there. It's just too like obvious over there. It's really hard to like you're just going to make it a very high pressure encounter. But anyways, there's that. There's a farmers market on the weekend which drives a lot of foot traffic. You can go into the Whole Foods to do sets. 24th is pretty long. There's a lot of businesses. There's a lot to do there. Sanchez is basically a road they permanently closed to cars, and people go to like walk and jog and whatnot, just like kill time. And then this connects to 30th, which connects to Church Street, which is also sort of like a business street that has sort of light foot traffic. So like it's nice to kind of start there, go through Church. You can get like maybe 2-3 sets on that one, then on 24th you can get some and come back. Problem is, and this is right outside my house, by the way, Robert. So you would remember this neighborhood. It's where we got the train, but it's a lot of married girls over here. Like it's very family oriented, but there are cute single girls. I have gotten dates and lays from this neighborhood. It's just like you're look for a ring and don't over approach. Don't be an idiot and ruin it for everybody else. Like be smart if you're gonna go do this neighborhood. Is all I ask.
Super cool. Super. You're such a giving gentleman. Girls must appreciate it. And if nothing works, guys can always go on open tweakers where you took me for a walk.
Yeah, dude. Oh my God. But I honestly think this is a good segue for some of the like good parts about SF because I think it's a good way to
Yeah.
kind of cap off the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So like sort of to cap that off, I mean you have a lot of different neighborhoods here that are day gameable and that have a lot of variety. So like there's no excuse of like, oh, there's these none of these girls are my type. Like, no, you can kind of find a spot that works. Um, the weather's never really that cold. I mean, like if you want a day game all year, you kind of can. I mean, it rains a little bit in the winter, but it's not that bad. Um, I day game in the winter here some days. It's pretty nice in that sense. Interesting fact is that this is the second densest city in the U.S. after New York City. So San Francisco, that jurisdiction is very dense. So lots of foot traffic, guys. I mean, like it might not be the best demographics necessarily everywhere, but you have the volume to learn the basics of day game. And eventually, if you stick it out, I'm sure you can do well. Um, Once again, easy to stop girls. I don't think stopping is very difficult. Unless you go to Market Street or like the really crazy city center where there's like bums and things, obviously just don't go there. Go to the neighborhoods. They're way better. Girls are way more friendly, easier to stop. Um, the museums here, and this is something I've been wanting to do, but they have tons of cute girls. Seriously, that's a gold mine that I've been wanting to get into, but I don't care enough about museums, so I'm not going to go there. But on that note, too, Golden Gate Park, I wanted to list that as part of one of the neighborhoods too. But that is a fantastic place to go. I mean, especially if it's a sunny day in like September, October when you don't get the wind and all that. Phenomenal. I mean, it's you got lots of tourists if that's what you're into. You got multiple museums. You have there's this really cool spot actually. So look up the roller derby. So there's this one spot where you just have like hippies and people just smoking weed with like rollerblades doing crazy shit. It's a great place to go people watch, and you can sort of like easily talk to people around there. And there's like a main road where people are just showing up to walk and kill time. So like it's pretty easy over there too. So those are my pros about SF. It's instead of going into the negativity because we all know what that is.
I hear all of these stories and places, and I just want to visit you in SF again. So you said there are a lot of pros to San Francisco.
Well, that's me doing my best to give some pros.
Okay, okay, very good. So there are like a lot of good locations, a lot of cool people, easy to stop. Very nice. Um, so you said maybe let's move to the dynamics that work over there. You said that a high energy party guy is like a day gamer type, the fuck boy. That's not what works there. So what does work in San Francisco?
Yeah. I guess I just call it like soft leading. It's just kind of like being more of the Buddha and the badass Buddha that Tom Torero describes. It's like
Yeah.
being a little more chill and just like letting the girl talk. Because I think so the types of girls you get here, they tend to have like sort of more stressful jobs, or they're more intellectual. They're sort of less of the party type and sort of more thinkers. And so like this might be an exception, but for me, what works better is really like you can get into intellectual topics, just not in like a nerdy way. Like you have to still
Mhm.
keep it like, I mean, you know what I mean. You could probably explain it better, but it still has to stay man to woman. And that you can retain just through like your voice tonality and body posture, for example. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be like the content of it, but just make sure that your frame stays really grounded when you're saying these things and going into this. Um, but the girls also here, if you just like are a chill cool guy, like they will lead you back to their place, and like they'll end up doing the work for you. It just I find if you put the like if you put the foot on the gas a little bit too much here, it really kills it. It's not like other cities. So I have dated in other places and like gotten laid in a variety of other, I've lived in a bunch of places, and here I'd say like value just like being more chill, more like know when to make your fucking move though, and don't puss out, but chill out more. I think really works.
Yeah, and I think if you are a cool guy, like that's really chill, and then I think SF, at least from what I understand, is a lot of very serious guys, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's another pro actually. Is there's very little like competition over here with guys because they're all like really serious, generally kind of nerdy software engineers, and like don't um generally more less successful with women. I would say like the archetype guy over here, and so it's actually a good point,
Yeah.
Robert.
So if
Yeah.
you have more than one side to your personality, if you're not just a tech guy, but you're doing interesting stuff, and you learn how to show it in a conversation with girls, I think then it sounds like SF is actually a really good place for day game. What I'm hearing is depending on where you go, this is how I pick where to take students sometimes.
Hmm.
Depending on the level a student has and where he will be day gaming, it's important to understand the price of entry for each location. Let's say you go to like an easy place in South America or Latin America in general. The price of like you can be like a decent beginner and you're gonna get laid. Whereas you
Mm,
have places that are really hard where unless you're advanced, you're not gonna get laid. And it sounds like San Francisco is like that from what you're saying. And
yeah.
so the idea is what level you have to reach to start getting real results. And so that's the problem. It means that the guys who are in San Francisco, they're gonna, unfortunately, this is a shitty thing, but they're gonna listen to this. They're gonna go out, they're gonna try to implement it, but it's not gonna work. Because unless you are at a level where you can find your mistakes, you're not gonna you
Mm,
have to be at an intermediate level already to be able to analyze your mistakes and then move forward. Usually for beginners, they don't see their mistakes, they don't understand the mistakes they're making, they're not even able to polish the structure, which was basically the fundamentals of everything you did. Like it was built on first polishing the structure and then adapting it for the environment. Unfortunately, they're going to struggle with polishing the fundamentals unless someone guides them through it and things like that, and then they can build on top of that and become advanced and do good in San Francisco. That's what it's usually like in these cities with high price of entry. For some guys that is New York City, for others it's not, but in general they also say that New York is a pretty high price of entry
mm.
unless you're like a good looking social butterfly and then you add a bit of game on top of that. But very cool, very cool. And what did you realize about your style? What is the style that works for you in terms of looks and whatnot that works for you in San Francisco?
Yeah, so I ended up getting a haircut actually a while ago. So I used to have like a fratty kind of like, fade haircut, which in San Diego, for example, that works really great. It's like a sort of military defense crowd over there, like super fratty. Here in San Francisco, I mean I never, it never didn't work, but what worked much, much better was I got a mullet actually. So just kind of like a more of an edgy haircut, like like a clean modern mullet, not just like a trashy like
Yeah,
NASCAR driver mullet, but
yeah.
and like I actually noticed an interesting difference there. And then with my appearance, I keep it really simple. I'll mention like I work out a lot, so I just wear like nice fitting clothing, keep it dark, and then the only thing I will peacock with is there's two things. One is a watch and one is sunglasses. So just have what I tell people actually often, and this is like something I stack about that because I find it to be a good thing to do is always peacock with one item. Everything else should be normal, but it's like if you have one kind of thing that stands out, it's like okay, this guy's not crazy. It just this is this one little thing, and it's like kind of cool, and you can use it, and it draws attention in a positive way. It's not like if someone has, for example, a see-through shirt, they're only wearing panties, they have a peacock fucking feathers behind them, all this. It's like, okay, this is a nutcase. But maybe if it's just like, okay, they have this like one little thing that's off, then it's like that's an edge. And that just makes you stand out in a good way. And so that was like a positive thing I think I did in terms of style is understanding that and making sure I'm always sort of using that. And like girls started complimenting it a lot. It's funny. I mean, like they like fucking love the haircut. It's kind of hilarious. But
Oh, I want to. What are you doing with the watch? What type of watch are you peacocking with? Because I assume you're not meaning like the typical, tech bro. Oh, I got my subby, I got my AP or whatever.
no, I just have this like big, thick, like wide leather band that I put my Apple Watch on. So it's just like a very masculine sort of like band that stands out. I think that
Okay.
I've gotten a lot of compliments on that too. And then what I typically do, I mean, um, wear boots on a date sometimes if I'm going to like a place that makes sense. But like, yeah, I mean, just being like the fratty guy only really works if you're going for Marina girls. Otherwise, like just be sort of like a little bit edgy, just a little bit.
Yeah. The Freddy guy, the thing, this if you look at the old day game content, yeah, they were saying, oh, you have to like leather jacket, boots, and like layers, and everyone was this bad boy, which works in some places with very specific types of girls, but it's if you're a geeky guy and you dress like that, it's obvious that you're only doing that because someone told you to do that. It's so
Yeah,
stupid. It's such
yeah,
a bad advice for day
it's
game or for
terrible.
styles. you gotta have a good style, but you have to build it around your personality. I think it's very important. I mean, that's why most of my students, I always set them up with my stylist, and in most packages, like it's already included in the price, just because
Mm.
it's so important. It's easy to do. It doesn't cost you much. You know, how much are you gonna spend on like improving your style a little bit, I mean, whatever. And okay, so
I think that's great advice. So I think guys that are struggling with day games should always get a second opinion on their style.
yeah, but from a
It's a
do
great.
it with a professional, like
Yeah,
find a
yeah.
high level professional, and anyone who works with me, I always said them. So like, don't do it before working with me if you're ever working with me, whoever's listening, because I'll set you up, and she knows how to work with day gamers. She's really good at it. Anyways, you said there are some extra tricks for San Francisco, some little tips and tricks that you found,
Um, y-
or how we covered them already.
I think we might have covered them. Like some of the little tricks. I'm trying to see if I have anything else. I have like random notes here. Let me just take a look. Um, okay. Oh yeah. So one thing I didn't, maybe a couple of small things. These are sort of just a miscellaneous, let's call it, but some of the typical accusations I will throw into anything or just some of the dynamics. They are either a bully, loitering, they're high, or here I like sometimes like a nerd or a tryhard, but be careful with some of these. Like you have to smile. Don't come in like looking like the Terminator and tell them these things. They'll think you're an asshole. But yeah, so these are sort of the angles I always go for in every set is like, those are my pushes because it's light. It's, something they can change. It's not like making fun of them for smoking or something. Like yeah. And
Yeah,
then, um, yeah, this actually relates to the date. So just in general, the girls here can be a bit awkward. And so when you approach them, if they don't say anything back, it doesn't mean they don't like you. It means just like slow down, low voice, keep going, keep stacking, and wait until they leave or like until they really, really or they really give you the body language that they want to leave. But sometimes they're just a little anxious and it's okay. Just be chill, give them like go slow. Um,
have you
and
tried
then,
at that moment switching to questions instead of stacks?
that's something I should try. Um, Someone else told me that too, and I think I should do that. That's a really good point,
No,
actually. Is
because
just a
I was coaching last summer. I was coaching a guy in Finland, and it was very weird. Like they have like a different understanding of how people talk. It's just like they're
mm,
different, and we
right.
realized that stacks just don't work there. And we did like one, two stacks, and then we just went into questions and had and all of a sudden they're responding. Like they don't view stack as something they have to respond to because they're just they communicate differently. From
mm,
what I understand, small talk from what I've heard is not a thing in Finland.
right.
So you have to kind of adapt. So I'm thinking because I assume the crowd in San Francisco could be some people could be similar to what you see in Finland, where people are a bit more they look a bit more introverted. You can just kind of switch to questions and
Yeah,
just give them their space to like wait until they feel safe to respond and be okay with them not responding and not giving you much. It just doesn't mean they're not interested. It's just they don't talk a lot. That's fine. Don't assume it's
yeah,
anything bad. So
right.
okay.
Yeah. I also wanted to throw in a few other things. So there's
Yeah.
a couple areas close by that are really great for going to practice. Some of them you can pull from. I have from some of these places, but like the logistics aren't the greatest. But it's nice if you need to change the scenery. So I want to run through kind of a short list of these places. So one is actually this is when I first reached out to you, Mr. St. Robert, but at Santa Cruz. So it's a beach town south of San Francisco. It is great for day game. It's like super chill hippie vibes. Um, People are really friendly. There's like a boardwalk area, a nice beach, and the downtown is great. I think it's a good place to go. Like it's not like you're gonna get crazy volume there, but if you're there for the day or you want to go check out the beach, like why not just do both? Like go do a couple sets, go do something, go to the beach. It's a nice place. Really cool town. Another one is the mall that I took you to. And
Yeah.
so
I was
it's
gonna
called
ask about it.
yeah. So that's called Valley Fair. So this is actually a whole topic of its own. I'll come back to this in a moment because that place is interesting. Then there's so we'll come back to Valley Fair in a second, but there's Walnut Creek. So this is like 20 minutes from downtown San Francisco. You can go across the bay, and it's like this very clean, sort of nice upscale city with a nice downtown. And there's a lot of cute girls. I would say that like it's more of like late 20s girls. You can get laid over there. It's not. It's a little bit tough, but you can. Berkeley. So University of California, Berkeley is across the Bay Bridge from San Francisco. It's about 30-minute drive, so it's not very close, but the volume is insane. If you're a guy who's sort of in his 20s, especially, I think it's a really, really good place to go and practice day game. Not only the school, but like all the areas around there is just flooded with girls. I mean, it's I don't go there anymore. I think I'm too old for that now, but yeah, it's a great place to go if you're like maybe early 30s, late 20s, or 20s in general. Um, and so I'll go back to Valley Fair because so when I was coached by Robert, he took me to Valley Fair, or I took him, I should say, and he coached me there. And it's this really, really big mall. It's about an hour south of San Francisco. It's in San Jose, but this is a good place to practice. It suffers from a lot of the same problems as like Marina and other areas. It's a very upscale mall, and it leads to very flaky numbers. I have some lays from there. Very sporadic though. Like it's probably the worst spot actually, as far as like my open delay ratio over there is probably terrible, really bad. Um, but it's good to practice. You can get a lot of volume, and if it's yeah, I mean, it's really good for that. And if it's a rainy day and you really just wanted to get sets in, this is a place to go because there's really nowhere else to go. And so, like, just keep that in mind. It's huge. I mean, you could easily do 20 sets there. Um, and It's pretty much the only place in that whole area that's gameable. I mean, the south of San Francisco is just terrible. So don't bother other than that mall.
How about texting? Anything specific about texting in San Francisco?
Yeah. I mean, so I could go into like a few things about texting and dates. And so like the girls here typically want to start the date later in the day because they all work all fucking day at their tech job or whatever. Um, and so like generally set your dates up for like after 7 or 7:30 even like even on a weekday it should be pretty late, but as far as texting is concerned, just be a minimalist texter. I mean, take whatever you need to say, cut down 10%, look at it, and if it's still too long, just keep cutting. I mean, just make a good habit of making your text just short and to the point. Don't write paragraphs or anything like that, and just get them out within a few texts. I mean, you should have if you had a good set and you got a good number, it should be very obvious. And like you should have sort of already like almost in a lot of sets, I'll actually just figure out like there, like, oh, let's go to this place. It's really cool. How about on Thursday? And then almost just follow up that way through the text. Um, but my basic formula is just if it was sort of like a so-so set, or I really think I need to calibrate, then just be like, send out just a regular ping, see how they respond, and then just escalate into a date. Whatever that number of texts it takes, you should only take you two or three. And then if I know it's like really on and we already kind of planned it out, then like sometimes it can just be even shorter. But I always sort of open with a ping, and then I might go straight to date request if I know it's fine, or if she's texting back really quickly and like same day opportunity, just go for it. If it's the right energy there. Um, yeah, and then just don't text too much. I mean, I'm a minimalist texter, and I only text them back usually twice a day. I don't want to sit around texting. So just another reason to keep it short is like it's congruent with someone who doesn't want to text. If you're texting very like if you're never texting them back, but it's always big paragraphs, it's like, well, do you like texting or not? But if you're keeping it to the point, then it's like, oh yeah, this guy has better things to do, and which you should have.
So I remember you hated texting. So
Yeah.
did you become better at texting, or did you find a way how just to not text?
I think it's probably most of just finding ways to not text
Okay.
because getting better at texting just became minimalist texting.
Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with minimalist texting, especially in some places. Like in New York City, that's what you do. Just a few texts a date, and that's it. You don't need a big back and forth. And texting has changed. Texting is much more to the point now. It's not like, like years ago where you're like, oh, like for 3 days you text and on YouTube you ping, and it's like, fuck that. You exchange a few pings, she responds, date request. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. I just
Super
try
cool.
and
Anything else
yeah.
you want to share about San Francisco?
I just want to say, like, just general observation of like I've seen a lot of guys try it out here, and I've never seen anyone stick to it. Like, just they always quit. And yeah, I mean, stick it out. Like, try and use stuff I used, man. Like, talk to Robert too. He helped me get there. So I think all of those. There's a lot of tools out there. You could make it work if you're like me personally. The only reason I'm day game here, I was stuck here. I had no choice. I'm going to be leaving soon. But if you're in my shoes and like, hey, you have to live here, you can make it work. There's the volume there. Um, yeah, there's a lot of complaints about the city, but it's like it's doable. So just stick it out. Like just figure out the model first, and once you get that over with, it might be painful, but just figure out the fucking model. That's
Yeah,
all.
you can figure it out in like with the right guidance, a few months. Like that's it.
Yep.
And like maybe like it depends on how far you want to polish, but the fundamentals maybe 6 months, but like like a bit of help and yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
dude, thank you very much for sharing all of this because San Francisco is a place that I've heard a lot of negative opinions about, and I knew that you're doing okay there, but turns out you're doing really, really good there. So congrats on cracking it. The last thing I want to ask, how do you view Daygame now that it used to be this thing where you had to struggle and like nothing worked, and now you're over the hump. So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So like my approach to it now, honestly, is I might do like dedicated day game sessions if I'm on a trip, or like if I just feel like I need to practice a little bit to get my skills back up. But generally, how I use it now is like understanding the model and applying it. So always be stacking is one thing, and then the other is just I have sort of like a list of things. So let's say your type is whatever it is, black hair, this and this and this. Then the rule is you have to go for that, but everything else is whatever. You don't have to go if you're just trying to get your shit done that day and you're doing your errands. Do what you need to do, but for like the certain girls that you really would not let them go by, actually just do those.
yeah.
And you'll get a few in here and there. And the thing is because you're like genuinely interested, like at a certain point, you can get too many dates and you're like, fuck, I don't even want to go on these fucking dates. But if you're only approaching girls that you're type, like every date that comes up, like, okay, like, yeah, I'll get out of bed for this. Right. And so once you get to there, it's, I don't know. Good.
Yeah, this is similar to what other guys who are at that level say. They get to a point where they can easily get laid, and they're like, "Well, I have a few regulars. I open really hot girls, but I do dating for fun sometimes. But I'm not as dedicated anymore." And you don't have to be once you're at that level, and that's very good. Bingo, thank you very much for sharing this. I hope we bump into each other at some other location wherever you move, or maybe we meet in Europe. We might, by the way, be doing some bigger thing in July, maybe, depending on the schedule in Europe, just for fun. I might get a few kind of old guys together just for fun and explore one really cool city. I'll let you know if we're doing that. And thank you.
Dude, thank you too, man. It's great catching up with you as always. And please do let me know about that trip. As you know, I'm a free man now. I can leave the country. So yeah, I think Europe's knocking, man. It'd be great to see you.
I will. That's it, guys. If after listening to this podcast episode, you're thinking, damn, I also want to learn to Daygame like this guy, then you'll find all the information about coaching, both in person and online, in the links in description. Thank you for listening. See you in the next podcast episode. Ciao, guys.